Everyone's been saying that ADUs solve the housing crisis. So why is it that so many people don't even necessarily start an ADU project, and those that do, there is a significant portion that never even make it to a permit and actually get it built? California has over 7 million eligible homes for ADUs, and their backyards stay empty because the average homeowner isn't really able to navigate the process by themselves. Everyone asks, like, how many units can I put?
Yeah.
And that's almost never been the right question to ask. It's, what should you build? What's one of the biggest mistakes they can make?
The biggest mistake is you pick the wrong team. And people try to save a little bit of money or time up front. And actually, that's exactly when you should be investing time and money. The laws change every year, and it feels like we're making mistakes and then erasing and then rewriting. Because a lot of the time, you're going to come to me and think you want an ADU. And by the time we really get to talking about what you're trying to accomplish,
we all get the same 24 hours. So why is it that some people build so much more with them? I'm Brian Coons, and this is the Builder Nation podcast, where we talk to top performers, entrepreneurs, and visionaries to uncover the architecture of a meaningful and fulfilling life. Let's get into it.
Welcome to another episode of the Builder Nation podcast. Got my boy Ryan O'Connell, How to ADU, one of the OG legit masters of ADUs, like the person that I would go to, which I feel pretty confident in my abilities. Like I would go to you anytime I have a question on anything legislation, anything like that. So everyone's been saying that ADUs solve the housing crisis, but so why is it that so many people don't even necessarily start an ADU project, and those that do, there is a significant portion that never even make it to a permit and actually get it built? California has over 7 million eligible homes for ADUs, and their backyards stay empty because the average homeowner isn't really able to navigate the process by themselves. So
you're good because you embedded my answer in your question. You got the data there for it.
Yeah. So dive into it, man.
Dude, ADUs are wonderful. They're not going to solve the whole housing shortage, but they're one of the biggest growing tools we have because exactly what you said. In California, there's 7 million yards that could do it. And so when we pass really progressive legislation, and I can rattle off like the Hall of Fame that our Yimbys have gotten through in Sacramento, some of those are great laws, but there's only 200 affordable housing developers who are qualified to take advantage of them. They all have existing business models. They all have existing pipelines. They have exposure that they have to worry about. Homeowners, there's 7 million of them. Mm-hmm. So just the sheer potential number of developers, would-be developers, is so big that we get big numbers. And then, some of them come into the complications because it's still complicated, as you know, and they don't always make it to the finish line. But the half that do, or whatever the stat is, that they are a large volume because the beginning number, the denominator, was so big.
So why do you think more people haven't started the process?
It's easier to answer the positive version of that question, where it's like things happen in your life that make you interested or curious about development, right? And it's different for different people. The first people to adopt in the markets that I've gotten to play along in California, and I only started in 2020, so like a lot of people have been working on this longer than me and put in the years when it wasn't a party yet. And what I've seen is a lot of the time there's a precipitating event in your life. Somebody's moving, a child is graduating from college, a parent needs elder care. There's all these things that happen, and ADUs are such a solution to so many of those problems that they come up, and that person is highly motivated. So they're likely to be an adopter in the early years when it's still really hard and even though it's very expensive. On the other end of the spectrum, there's like everybody with a yard has an interest in Googling what they could do with it, even just to know, right? But that's not a precipitating event. So other than like one of my thumbnails falling on some hapless guy's YouTube page and he's forcing his wife to watch hour-long policy videos, God bless you. Anybody who has been, it's that happens. But that person is not in the right place to start learning about housing policy yet, if that makes sense. Does that answer the question?
No, exactly. And so, I want to get right into like, what is like the sauce for people like trying to do ADUs in 2026 moving forward? Like, what should people actually care about?
Oh, geez. I say it's what you're trying to accomplish. Like, before you get too bogged down in the details of an ADU, write down like a life change, right? And so some people, they're looking for a way to make a different income and change like where their money comes from. Some people are trying to solve a specific problem. Like, I really want to live close to my parents, or I really want to live close to my kids who are coming back from school or whatever. And when you have a real problem or goal, then you can start researching. Because a lot of the time, you're going to come to me and think you want an ADU. And by the time we really get talking about what you're trying to accomplish and what your assets are, I'm like, it sounds like you live like really close to a great tourist destination. You don't have a ton of cash, but you got a yard. Why aren't we talking about tiny homes and like a really small investment and you're doing short-term rental? Like that sounds like what you're trying to do with, and so if you write down the right goal, then we can tackle the secret sauce. But like, having said all that, ADUs are very often the answer.
Right. Well, so somebody knows they want to get into ADUs, right? They know that is just the modality for investing, for offsetting taxes, whatever like the sauce is for them. Like, what are the things that are actually going to move the needle forward, and how do they get into this in an effective way?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of this is somebody trying to develop for money.
for rental income for generational wealth holding. Yeah.
Okay. So know your market, and it'll vary a little bit depending on where you are, because like there's a different type of property that you want in Berkeley, California, where or in the Bay Area, people will live in kind of anything because there's such a shortage and it's so dense in some ways already in the single family neighborhoods. Whereas I live in Napa, it is easy to undercut the value of your property if you have a nice single family home. The market currently evaluates that as very, very valuable relative to the entry price, and you can get in and fix it and flip it very quickly, whereas ADUs aren't that quick one, right? So you gotta cater to the market, look for the right kind of property where it's gonna be a good final project for that market. There's like people who want to live in that. Maybe that's a better answer. If you think about the people who are going to be in those homes, you'll probably get a lot farther than if you just look at the framing, like and imagine how many doors you can put on a property, for example. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah. I mean, the amount of doors everyone asks me all the time. I talk about it all the time, but one of the biggest questions everyone asks is like, how many units can I put?
Yeah.
And that's almost never been the right answer, the right question to ask. It's what should you build?
I was just talking to somebody on one of my free calls because I feel guilty about how much I get to charge for my paid calls. But so I still do freebies on Friday. One of them was saying, can I do this? And can I build an addition and then convert the addition into a junior ADU? And I was like, Omar, why are you trying so hard to get these unit numbers? You could just build an addition and rent out a room. Like people rent rooms and it just depends on what you're trying to accomplish. I'll plug Derek, that ADU guy. He's more of an REI guy than I am. I'm like a law head of the clouds theory guy sometimes. But he was just on a webinar with me earlier this week, and he said, less is more, guys. If you can get away with, if you could cash flow a beautiful home and you don't have to add doors, add units, add all this stuff, it's way cooler to be wealthy off of 5 properties and independent than it is to be scaling. But
well, you bring up a good point, because there's something that I kind of like, there's an intrinsic detraction in value when you're adding more units to a property. And same thing too, there's a, now that AB 1154 came out and you can, have a JADU in certain circumstances that doesn't need owner occupancy, there's a huge, option to now it's like, cool, you can get 4 units on this property in very specific scenarios. But if you're just going to take part of the house and chop it away, all of a sudden you're taking away that square footage. So it has to be the right property. Otherwise it doesn't make sense.
Absolutely. And we see that in the data. People in mature markets like Portland, when you convert a garage, you are losing the value of the garage. It does appear in resale prices on the home.
Yeah. How much does converting a garage detract from the house in most cases?
Geez. And this was like a 6-year-old study already, but like you were losing in the, I want to say like 40 to 60 grand, and then gaining the value of the ADU, but you never netted out positive in that market. In the Bay Area, sometimes you net out positive on the true addition, even though it's very expensive to build. And I don't know down here. I'd ask you. You're the guy I'd call.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say like the detraction in value is probably fairly similar. But the addition in value, because housing prices are so much higher out here, probably is going to be much closer to the $200,000 to $300,000 range. So it makes sense in most scenarios, but it does not net this as much as you might hope in the very beginning. But the cash flow is what more people care about. So all of a sudden, something that would maybe add $100 to $200 a month in rent, maybe a little bit more, is now adding $2,000, $2,500 in rent a month for it. So all of a sudden, it just depends on like you're saying, your goal. If your goal is highest value, it may not make sense. But if your goal is offset income with cash flow, or have a rental unit, it will make sense.
Totally. And then because I'm always like, have a petition for you to sign, cities should allow parking in the front setback. And if your city does not, you're not required to add parking when you replace your garage, but you are doing the city a favor by adding off-street parking if you already have a curb cut. So fight real hard politely and be like, what could I do to convince you that parking in the front setback is appropriate for my neighborhood and my property, and it'll be good for the neighborhood? And like, how many neighbors do I have to get to walk into city council and say the same thing?
Right. Well, and it's something too. So yeah, the city council side, I mean, there's like certain pieces of it that, things are black and white. Like, hey, you're allowed this many ADUs as long as you fall within these rules and regulations. But stuff like that, like, why is it so gray area on stuff like that?
Yeah, so it's kind of this problem of like, who's going to fight for the parking in the front setback, for example. Like, my friends who are fighting for legal changes, like a California YIMBY action, they're focused on more housing. The people who would normally care a lot about parking are so focused on fighting us on housing that they're not looking for the easy wins. So really, it's an organizing thing. I need to reach out to people who I don't always agree with and say, hey guys, you know what we do agree on? We want parking in front setbacks. And I can have a big NIMBY cheese party,
Right. Yeah, picking your battles.
Yeah, exactly. And so there isn't a lot of energy going into that. But honestly, developers are some of the best people to pick that mantle up because they're local. They think a lot about value for the neighborhood if they're good developers. And they have the time to go to a city council meeting in the middle of the day, where a lot of the neighbors who think it's a great idea would not displace themselves on a Tuesday and miss work. And then also there's neighborhoods where parking the front setback would not be a good idea. So like, it should be a regional decision until it shouldn't be. While it's a regional decision, take advantage of that. Go talk to your city council.
Yeah, no, I love it. So, moving along with the legislation, we have something called AB 1033 that is, allows the condoization of ADU. So what does somebody need to know about condoizing an ADU?
So your city needs to opt in for now. This is a state bill that said, hey, you know how this one line in the ADU code says you can't separately sell an ADU except for blah, blah, blah. Now we're taking that out. If a city wants to adopt AB 1033, they can allow you to sell the ADU separately. To do that, you got to form an HOA. There's lots of good videos about this. You need an attorney, so talk to one early because you're going to pay them eventually. You might as well hire them early in the process for consultation. The first call is usually free too. It should be a condo attorney, not a Better Call Saul. There's a time for those. And then what I would say is first you need your city to adopt it. I got the list of cities that have adopted here. If it's helpful.
Let's say City of San Diego, right?
Okay,
Like they just adopted it.
Yep. So in San Diego, what I would say is you want the ADU to exist, right? It's helpful. The way the law is written now, the ADU kind of needs to exist. We'll come back to that in the future. But then you form a little HOA. A lot of the language in this is confusing because people hate HOAs. They don't like what they think of as condos. But I promise it's not like that. It's like a piece of paper. You never have to meet the neighbors. And it allows everybody who owns one of the condominiumized mapped units to sell it separately. So it's basically like it has its own APN. It's basically like its own property, but it's on one parcel. It doesn't require a lot split. And so yeah, you get that condo attorney. They'll sort you out. If it's a shared structure, it's a lot more complicated than if they're separate structures. If it's a stacked structure with a shared roof, it's really complicated. And you'll get in all these details as you walk down the road with a real condo attorney. Because like, for example, the shared roof, you need the HOA to have a policy about who repairs that roof, what budget it comes from, what the insurance is. Whereas if it's two detached structures, you don't need to worry about that. The HOA can mind its own business and be like a not single digit, but like a 2-digit annual fee. And kind of fade into the background.
Yeah. Do you think condoizing an ADU is worth it?
Oh, for sure. So what's really exciting about condoizing ADUs from my perspective, the policy perspective, is it instantly creates a home ownership opportunity at a fraction of the single family home price in the neighborhood. For the developer attitude, and I've done some videos in like Texas and other developed condo markets where you can see examples of this. But like if you have a big lot with a tiny 1950s house in the middle of it that's kind of awkwardly taking up the whole thing, that's an underutilized lot. And so the developer comes in, replaces that one house with two beautiful homes. You can't tell that one is an ADU and one is the primary. They're equal homes in that example. And they're both selling at new luxury construction pricing. So for him, that project pencils all day. Like he doesn't even need to break out a spreadsheet anymore. He kind of knows, like, don't worry, buddy. I can sell houses profitably, because the two, even at the reduced value of condos, have a high perceived market value because they look like houses. They have their own yards. They have
Right.
their own driveways. And so he makes bank, right? On the other hand, if you are holding, sometimes it makes no sense to condominiumize. If you are in a shared structure with a shared roof, you're going to look at the insurance, the annual insurance quote, and you're going to go like, well, why did we spend 10 minutes talking about condos?
Yeah.
It's just not worth it. Yeah.
No, that makes sense. So, moving forward, I mean, there's so many laws, right? We could talk about the laws all day on it, but moving forward, I mean, there's so many people that either don't get started, they're confused, they don't know where to start. So if somebody's trying to build an ADU in 2026, what's one of the biggest mistakes they can make?
Oh, geez. You're going to surround yourself with a team, and the team's job is to stay up to date with all the expert local policies, the market, the laws, and how to build stuff. All of these things that you're paying for their experience. The biggest mistake is you pick the wrong team, and people try to save a little bit of money or time up front, and actually that's exactly when you should be investing time and money. Spend time interviewing different designers and builders, spend time interviewing different people who you might eventually include in that team, because you want somebody who knows what they're doing and fits your work style. You're also going to be like working with them for like 9 months, a year, a lot of the time.
Right.
So
What does the wrong ADU team look like?
oof, I shouldn't make broad statements, but like whenever people say A to Z and like I'll handle everything, I don't want that in this kind of project. I'm highly suspicious of it, because even when it works, even when they're doing a great job, they have to be good at some things and worse at other things. Like
Yeah.
we're all average eventually, right? We're better
Yeah.
than average at half the stuff we do, and we're worse than average at half the stuff we do, even in my most generous.
No, exactly.
And then also a lot of scammers say, "Oh, I'll take care of everything.
Yeah.
You don't have to
Well,
worry."
and that's a great point, because and this is kind of like where I've transitioned my entire business model too, is because
Hey guys, if you're a business owner, high income earner, or investor who's been thinking about getting into real estate development but don't have the time to manage the process, this is for you. My company partners with people like you to help unlock the potential of your properties, or even source and manage new small scale development projects. We manage hundreds of ADUs and infill development projects across Southern California, and our team knows how to simplify the process so you can benefit from the upside without managing contractors, permits, or design headaches. Whether you want to develop your own property, explore ways to offset taxes, or just learn how the development model works, head to thebuildernation.com/partner. That's thebuildernation.com/partner, and see how we can help you build more with the same 24 hours. Now back to the show.
you have the designer that says, oh yeah, I'll get it started, and they'll, oh yeah, by the way, you actually need a soil study. That'll be, $6,000. Oh, you need a structural engineer. That's going to be $4,000. And they start tracking up, but they get theirs. Or you have the contract, and then maybe they get a kickback from a contractor that they know. That's how a lot of design firms work. So they say oh, well, A to Z. You have the contractor that says, oh, we're a design build firm. We'll get it permitted. They have no idea how to read code. They have no idea how to make sure that the property underwrites appropriately, because all they care about is locking you in at a high price on the back end. And that's so for me on my business model, I'm what's the one thing that is at the centerpiece where they get experts for everything else?
Mm-hmm.
It's the homeowner, but it's the developer,
Sure.
right? And so for me, it's what we do is development management, because I'm all I know is I'm good at herding cattle,
Mm-hmm.
right? I'm good at following up with the people and pushing the project forward and following the checklist that I've built from all these
Mm-hmm.
projects. And that's the one piece where the homeowner is a developer. They now have the opportunity to do something where up until this point, you had to have tons of money, tons of experience, tons of background and whatnot. And so now that's the biggest thing is how do you, stay in your piece where it's I am not the architect. I have no, there's question, when it gets past a certain point, I'm that's an architect question all day. I don't know how to, whatever. Same with contractor. I'm my partner is the contractor. And so it's hey, he has that background. There's a question that goes past my specific knowledge base. I'm ask him. Legislation, if I have a question, I'm calling you all day. And that's, I think, where people, see, they go to this guy who's cheaper, or they go to the guy that's oh yeah, I'm a, I can do this all, from start to finish. But it's okay, think about what their actual role in it is. Are they locking you into this super expensive construction bid, and they've never done an architect, they've never had experience with design?
Like,
Yeah, it's a perfect example. Like I love having conversations with people about their project early because I can kind of be like, yeah, you're on the right path, or there's like something you really should know about. And but then when people are deep in the weeds, I'm like, you want somebody on your team who knows everybody at the planning department's name in your town, and kind of like knows what grocery store they shop at.
Yeah.
and it's like it's a very different skill set. Like,
So how do you vet the right developer for your project?
yeah, well, it depends a little bit on the project. So here's some examples that come up a lot. I talk to a lot of mom and pop homeowners, like onesies and twosies, whereas I know a lot of the people listening are more development minded. But if even in a business like general contracting, some GCs don't mind the permit office, other GCs hate the permitting process, and that's not something homeowners know to ask about. You just got to figure out, like, what kind of project is this? Who else has done projects like the one I'm thinking about? What does their team do successfully? You don't need to know how it's built. You don't need to steal their team, but you go, well, they've got somebody who's really good at this part, permitting. They've got somebody who's really good at this part, piecing out the job site and like doing all the SOPs to make sure it stays on track, right? Like, figure out what the components of success look like, and then look at the team of people you like personally and have talked to and go, do I have all my bases covered? Like, what could go wrong? It's just, I don't know, this is basic business stuff, right?
Yeah.
But you have to imagine yourself walking down this path for a year and go, what's gonna kill me? Oh, it's this.
Yeah.
I don't have this person.
And I say basically, like, the architect is the quarterback of the team.
Yeah.
Like, if you have a good architect, a good like person who knows the good architect, like, you will succeed.
Yep.
You have the person who knows the good structural engineers. They work with people who get it done fast, and then they can refer you to, yes, like, all of the people who work with me generally will use this contractor or whatever.
Yeah, it's a good. I hesitate even there because, like, sometimes somebody's working on a one-car garage conversion. We were just talking about this, and I'm like, they come in guns blazing. They're like, who's the best architect I can hire? And I'm like, just remind me your budget on this project.
Right. and I say architect loosely. It could be a designer. It could be like, it's the person who is managing honestly, I guess, like, the permits, right? Like,
I agree with you, but it kind of goes. That's another thing too, right? If you're calling a design builder an architect, that they have different skill sets, and so it's, anyway, you know the drill. But I'm saying it for the audience, like, it's so important not to be overly prescriptive, because I've seen teams where it's a homeowner who wants to get super involved. They don't know anything about construction, but they're willing to learn and make mistakes and like kind of pay for their education on this first project. And so their only referral that they get is the person who does the trenching.
Yep.
And then that trencher introduces them to a foundation guy.
Yeah.
And the foundation guy introduces them to a framer. They go all the way up. And like, that's fine. That works sometimes. But that project is slow. It is a learning project. It could come very under budget if you don't count your time. It could come very over budget if you make some mistakes. Like, that's a success, depending on what you wrote down as your goal
exactly
at the beginning.
No, exactly.
And then there's other teams. I used to work for an architecture firm, which I love. Big A architect, right? Like, has the license, and she's really brilliant at what she does. And so but you pay for that skill. You pay for the user experience.
And yeah, that's something where when I was working at my past company, one of the guys there, he's an architect. With a big A, and he says he's the way he explained it was, architect cares about getting the permit. They'll make things legal.
Yeah.
They'll make it able to build. But then you have this other side that's the contractor, where they care about building it cheap. So you have to marry the two, and you need some bridge in between those two that understands both and understands the project. And that's honestly the developer in most cases, but obviously homeowners aren't developers all the time. So that's been one of the biggest pieces.
This is a story I tell a lot of people, but design builders, if you don't bid on your own design, you're not incentivized to lose sleep on cost engineering the design.
Exactly.
Right? Like, even the best meaning design builder in the world, they're just not going to sweat making a mistake in your design, not a mistake, but choosing a design that costs you an extra 20 grand because they weren't incentivized to think about that.
No, exactly.
Like, they're getting the 20 grand.
Yeah. I just recently had a guy who had this property in Mission Hills, and he had a house. It was really cool, perfect garage conversion, but this awful sloped lot in the back.
Yeah.
It's a very high income neighborhood, very expensive, but I was like, dude, like, not worth it. And he was like, well, I was talking to contractors, and they said, like, I'm like, yeah, no shit, you can get a contractor to talk to, like, he'll build that shit all day. He makes a ton of margin on that. And so it's like, when people, it's so funny when people like go and they talk to the architect or they talk to the contractor and they think that that's all be all. And it's hard because, like, there's not many people out there that actually have like the in between skill sets. And like Derek's a great example That's like kind of what I try and be for that, is that bridge between the two. It's like, hey, let's make sure it makes sense to build and that it actually also can be built.
Honestly, your passion is contagious. People, even who don't listen to the whole podcast or watch the whole all your channels, they can get a sense that you're super passionate, and that you want at least one crazy passionate person on the team. I would also advocate for having a person who doesn't love ADUs on the team, right? Like, have somebody kind of level-headed who's just like, yeah,
So you
it's
sure you
nice.
want to do that?
Yeah, sit down. Because it's some of that attitudinal stuff matters a lot too.
Yeah. No, it's good to bring different perspectives, right? On one of my past projects, my favorite project to date, I think it's the most beautifully done 4-unit over in Ally Gardens area. But I actually wanted to do more units on it originally, and my partner is the one who kind of like railed it back, and we got to a point where we have what we have now, and it's what I call tasteful development. That's kind of the phrase that I use, and I've kind of hopefully at least made aware of most people. But it's the marrying of what you can build and what you should build, and I think that's so important.
People talk about one-way doors in business decision making a lot, and like all construction is this really expensive one-way door.
Yep.
And so you got to be deliberate.
Yeah. So, everyone wants the density, everyone wants the ADUs, but not until it's next door, right? So there's a lot of continuing change. ADUs are something that have constantly changed, right? So what are some of the biggest lessons you've learned from the ADU policy and how it's changing?
For developers?
For both. So what are some of the mistakes in legislation you've seen, and how is it changing moving forward?
Yeah. I honestly, I embrace the mistakes. So I'll talk about one. I'll pick one and talk about it. But for developers, I would say don't try to get too clever and time markets ridiculously. Like, watch what laws pass. You don't need to be the first to know about them, but like, watch what happens, see what's getting done in an area, and figure out when the right time to catch that wave is, right? Like, we're sitting in a bonus ADU in San Diego, and that is not an opportunity people will have in the future to put this kind of unit on this kind of lot. And you seized the opportunity at the right time. You weren't the first, right? There were already dozens, hundreds in the pipeline, dozens completed, but these 4 homes exist now thanks to you finding that opportunity and getting in there. And so you don't have to be first, but do be paying attention, because the opportunities do also go away. And then for homeowners, like, I think it's frustrating to cities and homeowners that the laws change every year, and it feels like we're making mistakes and then erasing and then rewriting. And there's some kinds of work where you're supposed to rewrite, and lawmaking, it's actually nice that we have a very active, deliberative state legislature compared to the national politics, which you pass something once and whatever was in there, that's like what's in there. And you never know what's going to happen again. In California, you get another bite of the apple every single year. A lot of state legislatures meet every other or less. California, it's an iterative process. So we've made some mistakes. We've included some poison pills, we call them. Like, when we're negotiating, somebody says, can you just add this? And we add it, not realizing nobody's going to use this bill because of that one sentence. And then you change one word sometimes, and suddenly you're saving homeowners tens of thousands of dollars. And as long as we make that change, then we've moved forward.
Where do you think the bonus ADU program backfired?
This is philosophical, not practical, but like, words matter. And we carefully, not me, before my time, the movement carefully chose the word accessory. And there's something inherent to that word that's like, it's not the primary. It's like a purse or a belt. You wouldn't go out wearing just a belt unless it's a very special neighborhood. Like, it's, and that means it's less scary. And so you can build an accessory unit, and it's friendly, and it gets people used to development, even in single family residential neighborhoods. The bonus program, essentially, for everybody probably knows this by now, but my take is it kind of created form-based code in San Diego.
What is form-based code?
It's like, we get to tell you what the outside of the building proportions are, but what you do in it is your business. So like, cities like Paris which are revered for how they look, the outside of the buildings is very, very regulated. But if you want to run a dentist's office in your apartment on the 3rd floor of this apartment building, like, I hope you have a dental license. That's all, right? And that's kind of the short version of form-based code. In San Diego, by creating this ability to build a number of bonus units up until it hits the underlying zoning. What it did is it said, following this very specific set of rules, we don't care. You could build as many doors as you want up to the form that is allowed by the underlying zoning code. So it kind of backdoored that almost accidentally. And the wonderful thing about that is that form-based code is actually really interesting. The way that it created backlash, and the real reason that people are upset about it in good faith cases is that it wasn't an accessory use, and we didn't talk about it as form. We weren't like, we want to change all of code to be form based or whatever. I used air quotes. That feels duplicitous. It feels sneaky, and that causes backlash. I'll also say there's a lot of like bad faith operators who are using individuals in neighborhoods like in the Encanto to their real goal is just they don't like any kind of development, and they're making a publicity play, which, you know, that's about those people, not the individuals being used. But I watched the deliberations in San Diego, and I was really disappointed in how some of the electeds took the complaints to do something else. You know, it's just politics, man.
Yeah. So
Can't be idealistic.
What's one ADU policy that you changed and why?
Ooh, I think this is tough. If I could change anything, I get the magic wand question a lot. I would actually change culture and process around the implementation a lot more. Like, I believe there's this amazing book called Recoding America that's about kind of how even when we pass well-intended laws, they just don't get used because the way law and technology works don't go hand in hand very naturally. I would make it so that everything is a little more back and forth and iterative. You go up the waterfall. So like the state passes a law, the city enforces it, the homeowner uses it, and then the homeowner's like, hey, this part's not working to the city. And the city goes, you know, that's true. Let me go back to the state. And you could tell that's a very idealistic version.
Exactly.
But if I had a magic wand, I would create a public version of that process so that wonks like me could get involved and be like, I see that there's like a problem in this loop. And once you identify it, it's pretty easy to fix. But right now, this is another reason why ADUs work, is because legislators go and try to build an ADU. And then they're like, this is still really hard. What do you mean I'm getting charged a school fee? Isn't that an impact fee? Didn't I ban those? And then they go back to Sacramento to be like, I thought I passed this.
Right.
Where they never try to use some other bigger project. Anyway, but yeah.
No, I think that's an interesting point, is like, this is one of the only things that a legislator will pass where they have immediate feedback on it from experience.
Yeah, the pilot project is in their yard.
Yeah, no, it's actually, that's really funny. So, I mean, so obviously ADUs are growing. They're a growing industry. They will continue to grow for an extended period of time. So builders and homeowners that want to win going into 2026, into the end of the decade, how are ADU builders going to win over the next decade?
Ooh, if you're specializing, if you're like, I want to focus on ADUs, then figure out what makes you good at that and better than somebody who's great at big houses or somebody who's great at multifamily. What are the advantages you get by working on that ADU scale? Then also, don't get obsessed with the word ADU, because what happens in mature markets like Portland is that the advocates surpass ADUs. And so eventually you get different typologies that you could build. This is a fancy word for like different sizes and shapes of house. And then you want to be positioned to do a good job on those too. So, you know, I put ADU in the name How to ADU, but I'm highly conscientious that like a lot of the projects I look at have no ADUs on them anymore because there's tons of tools in the toolbox.
Yeah, no, I think that's interesting. The way I explain what ADUs are is they're a modality to get additional density on a property that otherwise wouldn't have been able to. Yeah, right. And so when people think ADU, they think that that's the end all be all, but you can use an ADU, you can use a density bonus, you can use a conversion. Like, all of these things are different ways to increase density, make a project pencil, get extra living space if you live there. So I think that's a really important point. And is, that's one modality, is just the standard ADU, but you have other things like SB9, which I think, I'd love for you to kind of like go into anything, any of the things that you think would be interesting or important for people to know moving forward.
Sure. Just a quick one. The original bill from the 80s about ADUs that we like tweaked in the 90s and thousands, but the movement, it's called them second units.
Yep.
And so it's not even ADU. We kind
It's just a name.
Yeah, it's just a permitting
Companion unit,
Yeah, exactly. And multi-generational family housing has been happening as long as we've been able to throw up walls, right? But yeah, so other bills that are coming up, I think the legislative session just ended, so we know what's going to come in January. I'm working on a big list, so check out the channel for the full dive. But like third party, so I will say the thing that people aren't talking about yet in ADUs is all the housing laws that happen to bump into or overlap with ADUs. So like third party permits, third party plan check, that's awesome.
Explain third party plan check.
So normal projects, you get your entitlement permit from the planning department and then a building permit, right? And if the city or county takes more than 30 business days to get you the building permit after you've got your entitlement, your permit, you can go and hire a third-party plan checker, a licensed engineer or architect.
Yeah. So what's the difference between a building permit and an entitlement?
Well, one is coming from the planning department and saying you can do this use here legally, and the building permit is like, we checked your construction specs, your docs, and like your stamp, and like it makes sense. And so that 30-day shot clock for hiring your own person, that kind of starts with ADUs. There is no formal entitlement, right? They've flattened it into just getting a permit to build. So we'll see how this plays out in 2026. But my theory is you're deemed complete, and then that clock starts. And on day 30, if you're in one of these jurisdictions that just doesn't answer, like San Diego answers, right? But if you're in a jurisdiction that does not answer and like slow rolls you, and they're just like, well, we don't have the staff. You're like, I got great news. You don't need the staff. Don't you worry your pretty little heads. I hired an engineer who's licensed by the state to do this. And then they have 10 days to issue a building permit or tell you what you have to fix. And so it just speeds that process up. And applying that in ADUs, strictly speaking, like the lawyers I talked to are like, you didn't need to do this. But the truth is, a homeowner, even if it's theoretically like deemed approved, no homeowner is just going to like pay tens of thousands of dollars to pour a foundation without a piece of paper that says they're allowed to do it. So it kind of gives you another path to paper your project and like feel good. So that's a big one. And then the JADU owner occupancy ditch is cool. ADUs with their own bathroom and some other details. And then the other big housing one is this gets really detail wonky, but like, if you sue the city over a small housing project, which includes ADUs, then if the city is at fault, they'll have to cover your attorney fees. That's with a lot of details that you should talk to a lawyer about. But like that's a new piece of legislation that kind of extends what some of the fee shifting that was available in the Housing Accountability Act. Like now it's available for a lot of different cases, and there's these massive fines for naughty cities. So it's going to change the conversation that I have with a lot of homeowners who are like, the city's not scared of me suing. That's because the attorney doesn't mind the individual lawsuit. But now that might change the conversation at the city, where the attorney has to go to the electeds or the staff and say, well, technically we will be on the hook for their attorney fees and this increasing fine from HCD. And yeah, maybe we should just.
So you can sue the city on the city's dime.
There is fee shifting. So if you win and you're going to have to cash flow, like oftentimes these things cost $100K to like actually sue for a year. But yeah, when you win, there are provisions now in this law that says, hey, the judge has to make the city pay. And again, that existed to some extent with the Housing Accountability Act, but now it's like a lot more explicit in a way that homeowners who have got a dime to spend and a beef to settle might be more interested. Yeah.
I love that, man.
Yeah,
so,
it's pretty cool.
It's wild, yeah.
And even if it just scares, even the chilling effect of making cities really consider, hey, our clients, our citizens, could also cost us a lot of money if we don't do a good job for them. Like, I don't love lawsuits. I would much rather skip ahead to the part where cities just do their jobs.
Yep.
And when they can't staff, that's okay. You send a note as soon as you get the permit and you say, just to let you know, we have a backlog of over 30 days. So if you want to hire a third party, you're doing us a favor and we don't hold it against you. That's a great outcome too, right? Like it's just, we're all trying to do each other's good.
Yeah, no, I mean, it makes sense. So, closing out here, like what is winning for ADUs moving forward in the next decade?
Oof. I do all this because I want people to be able to afford to live where they contribute to the community, whether that's working or you've retired in a place where you work or whatever contributing to a community means in your community. But like, it's hard to live where you work right now. And I got into this game because all my team was, when I was in the wine biz, this is my wine business. My team kept moving farther and farther away, couldn't afford to live there. And I was paying people, and I was like, what's going on? It was a housing shortage. So what does winning look like? It means that we actually see rents going the other way, or home ownership opportunities going the other way. And then we'll feel really good. We'll also be making, from the developer angle, there will be money to be made because you'll be doing more volume and things will be consistent and people will not have to move every year because they can't afford the rent. So there's wins on both sides if we do our jobs right.
Yeah. No, I love that, man. So if anyone wants to follow along with, stay up to date with the code, get in touch with you, what's the best way to contact you?
How to ADU on YouTube and TikTok. And I think I'm Ryan O Housing on Instagram. Everything I do is in the videos for free. So like, don't fret.
I love it, man. Dude, this has been so valuable, man. I'm so grateful for you coming on.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Appreciate you, and we'll see you guys in the next episode.
I love it.
We all get the same 24 hours. So why is it that some people build so much more with them? I'm Brian Coons, and this is the Builder Nation podcast, where we talk to top performers, entrepreneurs, and visionaries to uncover the architecture of a meaningful and fulfilling life. Let's get into it.